Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Technology Evangelist podcast. I am Dr. John Fluke, Technology Evangelist. And today I've got a couple of my really, really good buddies. I've known both of them for over 20 years, but they're not dentists. These guys are actually marketing geniuses and they deal specifically with the dental market. So, Michael Ventriello and Mark Ross recently, well, I guess in the last year or so, have teamed together to form Personify Group to help companies reach doctors. And they're doing some great things. So, guys, I always start off with my origin stories. You know, Mark, get in the Wayback Machine, go back as far as you want to go and tell me, how did you get to where you are now?
Wow. Um, well, great question. Favorite movie, Wizard of Oz, which is actually something that has permeated just about every aspect of my marketing interests, believe it or not, in one way, shape, or form.
And I sit here in Kansas, so this is perfect.
Yeah, and absolutely, right? That, see? So I've been doing marketing for 30 years, heavy into the pharmaceutical early on, pharmaceutical marketing. And worked with a lot of different companies. I started a couple of different agencies, and then I joined up some larger agencies, and we did a lot of healthcare, a lot of more pharmaceutical, medical, and a variety of different industries. And one agency that I was brought into as a brand vice president um, wanted to get into the dental market, and this was Karen. Mike, you know the name. And because this will be the segue. So I started working and I built up a brand division, an entire division around the oral care, the dental marketplace. And it really, really took off. We must have had around 15 accounts there.
Wow.
And we were very, very active. John, that's when I started doing work with you and the Catapult team.
Right.
We started a TV show.
Yeah.
Uh, um, and
We were ahead of the curve on that because it would be great now. We were just too early.
yeah, it was so
Yeah.
long ago. I think it was
Yeah.
pre-TV.
Yeah.
But we did really, really fantastic. And the agency was sold. I started my own agency since then. And I was tooling around in marketing and different industries, surgical, oral care again, and I would bump into Mike at a lot of the trade shows, and it's funny because we used to compete against our agencies used to compete against each other
Right.
prior to that, and it's a very, very funny story. I'm going to let Mike. I'm going to segue over to Mike's
Yeah.
origin because there's
Um,
a nice overlap there.
it's true. We used to run into each other, and I like to compare it to the TV show Mad Men. And there was an episode where they were pitching General Motors, and they're in the lobby waiting for their turn to pitch, and the competing agency, like their nemesis,
Right.
comes out. So that would happen with Mark and I. We're like, "Oh, you again." And it was very similar to Mad Men without the cool cars in the lobby. Instead there were boxes, boxes of bonding agents and things of that in the,
Right.
And we weren't
in the
smoking cigarettes
cases.
either.
But
Yeah.
similar. So we knew each other, and we kept in touch. We respected each other's abilities. And it was, it was a friendly competition between the two of us anyway. Um, And then we bumped into each other at Greater New York 2 years ago. And we said, you know what, maybe we should collaborate. We could probably do bigger things united than differently because, we do have complementary skill sets. I'm more on the public relations, copywriting, content, and Mark is, on the brand identity, graphic artist. He knows how to use all the graphics tools, animation, and we just started out like farming out things to each other. and it worked pretty well. It was like, you know what, we should do that. We should formalize that. And we did that at the Yankee meeting a year
Shortly
ago.
after.
Yeah.
Shortly after. And we looked at each other. We were like, "What if we were to start a marketing agency? What would that be? What wouldn't we do
Right.
based on our prior experiences? What should we do based on what the clients of today and tomorrow need?"
Right.
And then we realized pretty quickly that we started doing that. And we came up with the name Personify. And when you're doing branding, when you're doing public relations, you're building a personality about a brand or a product. And you bring it to life, you create a humanity around that product, something that's you can touch, it's emotional. And that's where Personify Group uh, was basically born out of.
Well, we've noticed, I think, some changes in the way things have been done. I think one of the things that I think is kind of cool is that in the last, I'm not sure, maybe 4 or 5 years, my kids really into, especially my son, really into anime. And Shofu being a Japanese dental company, they've changed their branding now. They've actually got a cartoon character, Dr. Anime, which I think is kind of cool. It's a great name for her. Um, and that brings out, I think, a personality. And I know that what you guys are doing is you're doing things differently now than like traditional companies. So how does that work? How do you guys look at things? I know you bill yourselves as dentistry's brand growth partner, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
important to partner with your clients. But how do you do things differently than what we've seen traditionally?
Um, yeah. So when we started Personify, we wanted to go wider than your typical, as far as the services and the support that we provide
Hmm.
a client. We've got a team of advisors now. You're included in that.
True.
And your experience is necessary for us to think outside of our.
Right.
We have a lot of experience in the industry, but with all that experience, it's nice to have other voices, hygienists, dentists, we've financial.
Yeah.
A lot of the companies we work with are disrupting the industry, and they're
Hmm.
looking to raise capital. We've got partners, advisors that are in the venture capital space, um, technology, web, digital marketing, whatever it is, we have that as part of our advisory team. So we've gone wider than a lot of agencies.
Mm-hmm.
But what the beauty is, it's virtually set up so that a client doesn't pay for the overhead. They don't pay for the team. They don't pay for an office. They're paying for what they need. And that's it. And we
Okay.
focus very narrowly on what a client needs. And I think based on our prior experiences, we know how to get there pretty fast.
All right.
And
The other thing I might add, John, is everyone we work with, that we bring into the team has dental experience. They understand the market. They know the nuances. They know it's different than medical and pharma
Right.
because, as entrepreneurs and business owners, we don't have time for a learning curve, and neither do our clients. So
Right.
we need to plug in a team that knows the game, basically.
Right. Which I think is great. There's so many, because we've talked about it before, and you guys know this better than I do, but there's been so many famous blunders in marketing, where the one that I always think of is KFC. And what I heard, at least the story was, they went into China, and of course their tagline was finger licking good, and the the tagline they tried to use in China came across to that market as it tastes so good you'll eat your fingers off. which, great idea in America, but didn't work so well. And
Yeah,
it's the same
yes,
thing. It's like
even
great in
even
medical.
even big brands blunder. Related to that is Chevrolet. They had the Chevy Nova. In Spanish, that means it doesn't go. Who wants a car that doesn't go?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
those are the kind of things that happen. But, related to consumer marketing, from my perspective, we're in a B2B space. We know that, we embrace that, but, we're always looking to consumer advertising, consumer marketing as what are the new best practices for our craft,
Yeah.
what we do. You can't be in the dental bubble, throw a product photo, features, benefits, call 1-800, or use a QR code or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, we like the creative approach to consumer ads, and we're students of classic advertising giants that have come before us, like, David Ogilvy, Ted Bates. You have more recently Lee Clow, who was with Chiat Day, and they did all the Apple branding and
Mhm.
commercials, including 1984. So, those are our aspirations. How can we employ that kind of creative thinking and push it down into dentistry?
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that's huge because, one of the things that I always try to preach to doctors is that the way to really irritate me is if I ask somebody, why are we doing it this way? The response is, because that's the way we've always done it. Um, that my whole career has been, isn't there a better way? And I love the fact that you guys, kind of bring that to the marketing side because, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. I love that expression or that quote. And you guys have shaken things up. If people want to get a decent idea of just how much you guys have shaken things up, I'd say go to the Personify Group website and
Mhm.
just look at what you guys have done with the website. I mean, it's something different than anything I've ever seen before. It really
Thank
brings
you.
it brings out kind of what you guys can do. And I think it's cool because it's like, we did this for ourselves, but we could do it for you as well.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that it kind of, when I look at your stuff, it kind of tells a story. I think a story is an important part of marketing.
If you think of the great campaigns, they tell a story, and some of them are, they're kind of old. If you think about the Schweppes man,
Yeah,
that was iconic. That was a myth. That was advertising mythology at its best, and that was David Ogilvy. I believe that the most interesting man in the world
oh my gosh.
from um, Dos Equis
Yep.
was an homage to that.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
A
that was
brand story is
yeah,
the anchor for every brand. And most brands, if you were to walk down a hallway in a building and speak to different people, many people don't know what the brand story is. They don't know they may have an idea of the mission, but they really don't know
right.
what was the genesis of the brand. What's the connection? What's the human connection? It should be emotional. It should create differentiation. Um, Internally, it affects culture and decision
Right.
making and hires because
Right.
every hire should actually support the brand going forward.
Hmm.
Um, there's a connection. It elevates a perceived value for a product or a company, and it's what you stand for. It's that if you were to shake hands with a brand, what would that brand look like?
Hmm.
What would that person look like as a brand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would
Yeah.
that product or company be as somebody you could shake hands with?
Yeah. And not to keep going back to Apple, but they're a great modern
Good
example
example.
of
Yeah.
branding because it's not a product, it's a culture.
Yeah.
Um, I was
Yeah,
at
It's
a
an
shop.
experience to
Yeah.
purchase something.
Yeah,
It really
I
is.
was at a shopping mall a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, shopping malls are dying, blah 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 blah.
Right.
But that Apple store, it was
Oh,
busy.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always been, one of the coolest things, one of the greatest stories I've ever read was the reason why when you get a box, when you buy a product from Apple and it comes in a box and it's a
Yeah.
heavy duty box, you know that
Oh,
they
yeah.
spent the 15% of the cost on that box alone. But what they really like is they want the product to come across as being important, valuable, quality,
Hmm.
has that quality connection. And the box is designed, especially the boxes that the iPhone come in. It's actually hard to open a little. There's a vacuum that's created when you lift up the lid, and it's
Yeah.
designed to create anticipation as you open up the box, and
Interesting.
then it's like boom, and you're like, wow. And it has all these things that make it really
Mhm.
easy to basically work with the phone. Wasn't
Yeah,
always like that, but
Right.
that
and even on,
packaging is a great example of how the brand permeates everything that they do, the experience.
Yep.
and
You
that
know,
experience, there are invisible things to the average person that were obsessions of Steve Jobs. And
mhm.
that was like, what's inside the computer? Like, he would agonize over the aesthetics of the motherboard and how it's like soldered into the frame.
Yeah.
Who would know that?
Well, and you know what's really interesting is you triggered a thought, Mark, well, you both did, but I still remember um I wasn't using Apple yet. I was on Windows at the time, but I bought my first 5 GB iPod. And it was the big one with the scroll wheel.
Yeah.
And I still remember seriously, I remember opening the box. And what I remember is this isn't like a package like anything else I've ever seen before.
Right.
And I was like, they have really, this is thick. It's well made. It's smooth to the touch. It really was. I still remember I opened that box, and opening the box was an experience, let alone what was inside of it. But it
But
just I paid like $600 for the crazy thing at the time just for an MP3 player. But I
what
was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I bought this one. Because if they've done that much thought into the box, imagine what they've done to the rest of it.
Right,
And
right. And
I was in before I even plugged the stupid thing in.
look, there's no doubt, buying an Apple product, it's like treating yourself to something
Yep.
special.
mhm,
There's a feeling that it's special, it's really
yeah,
emotionally, it's a tangible feeling. And I'm not saying the box itself, but the emotion
Right.
is
Yeah.
palpable.
yeah.
You are experiencing something that is somewhat, look, they positioned it as an elitist
Hmm.
product. Their audiences are more on the creative side than the financial side,
Right.
though their high-end products do the work that any PC will do. But that they've targeted the movie makers, the Hollywood. They've targeted all the graphic design and age advertising agencies.
They've provided an excellent tool for nonconformists to be nonconform
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
conformist.
Yeah.
so,
And
and if you
Think
watch a
different.
movie
yeah,
nowadays, when you watch a movie and there's a computer, especially if almost any kind of computer, but if it's a laptop, 99% of the time, it was an art director saying, when the director said, "We need a laptop in here," that somebody would just take a laptop and put it. It was always a Mac, and
Yeah.
sometimes they covered the Mac logo with a circle or something.
Right.
mhm,
But you know it was a Mac. You could tell the shape.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
and you know, that kind of ties in, I think, with dentistry because so many times in dentistry, we just pick stuff up and we use it. And I don't see now as much brand loyalty, I don't think, as I used to in things. It's things have kind of become a commodity.
mhm,
Yep.
And yet there are some amazingly superior products out there, but a lot of doctors, like if a bonding agent is a great example. What bonding agent do you use? And I'll bet 80% of the time the answer I get is whatever the assistant hands me. And, I think it would behoove companies to somehow get that connection back
Right.
of the product with the doctor, where the doctor gets some loyalty to something. It's
And
not,
that's,
It
and
comes
that's,
down to cost so internally a manufacturer says,
yeah,
we don't want to, how much is the cost of the box versus the product and all told,
right.
and where are our margins, and that's all very, very important. We work with a lot
and,
of companies
and
that are very
branding,
focused on that.
and
Yeah,
branding is establishing
Oh,
value.
yeah, but when you think about um, when that box is delivered to somebody, what is the likelihood that they're going to use it and the perceived value is something that comes across for the product? I mean, how do you separate from how many bonding agents are there? 50?
oh yeah, easily.
Something like that, right? So how do you differentiate it? Certainly the quality of the product is key.
Right,
Specific applications that it's used for are key. Um, but it won't get used or even appreciated in the way that the manufacturer intends it to be appreciated unless there's a perception of quality.
Mhm.
And it even says to the user, this works.
yeah,
You can trust it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Trust is the big factor.
And
I
at the end of the day, dentists are consumers,
right.
and they are inundated with consumer advertising, messaging, and marketing. They know what's good. Even though you're B2B and industrial,
Mhm.
the bar is high.
Well,
It
the
is.
the reason is everybody's a consumer. We're all affected by consumer messaging.
Yep, that's what I
So
said.
when you're doing B2B, there have been a lot of companies that have done B2B marketing, and it's just flat. It's not interesting. It doesn't break through. And if you
Right.
want to have a conversation about breaking through nowadays, like on social media or print magazines are getting a little lighter these days.
Oh yeah.
There's more money spent in digital, in search, and on web, and those breaking through the digital atmosphere is
Right.
very, very, very difficult. Scrolling is like it's almost automatic without thought. And if you want to stop somebody, there's got to be something that breaks through. And we spend a lot of time in ensuring that whatever we do breaks through, and
Yeah.
we are reluctant to do something that we think is not going to get noticed.
Yeah, we spent when we worked together, we spent a lot of time really beating ourselves up the idea, bulletproofing, what if this type of person read this or saw this, how would they react? Hygienist versus dentist. I mean, we try to look at every angle because you have to,
Yes.
unless you're doing very, very hyper targeted marketing, and then you have to make sure that the message is hyper targeted.
Right. Well, and I think sometimes today it seems so easy. I've talked to companies before and they'll tell me like, we've got an email list of like 100,000 dentists and we just send out, like 2 emails a week. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know, how many emails do you get? And that to me is kind of just throwing spaghetti on the wall, which you made me think of that, Mark, when you were talking about how do you differentiate things and set things apart. You know, I'm looking at my inbox, and even with spam filters, when I open my email program, my finger is already resting on the delete key because
Mhm.
I do look at them all, but it's like bang, 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 bang. And so I know for me, like, okay, so that people know Personify, their logo is it a thumbprint or a fingerprint, guys? It looks like a thumbprint to me.
It's a little of both.
Okay.
I think you can have your own um, you can personify it however you want.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that if I was delete, 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 and there was a huge graphic with a thumbprint. I'd say this whether I was talking to you guys or not. I'd be like, what is that?
Hmm.
You
Well,
know, I'd
John,
stop and look.
a
Yeah.
fingerprint is unique.
Yes.
And that's really the basis of why it's part of our identity, is that every company is unique. We don't have the same approach for everything. Everything, it's literally we throw out everything we've learned about the last client or the other client, or
Right.
what we've done 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or 5 minutes ago. Every client deserves to have its own fingerprint in the marketplace. Um, and we believe that's the case because people don't buy products, they buy stories they believe in, they buy personas they believe in. And that's what we always try to tap into. There's an emotional connection that must occur for somebody to continue to buy something. Uh, Great quote. I think it's from Bernbach, one of the old guys.
Yeah.
Good advertising makes a bad product fail faster.
Hmm.
One of
Ah,
my favorites. So we try to work with companies that have good products, uh,
mhm.
really good products, beneficial products, because products that are focused on benefits and solving a problem. And most most products do, but not everybody markets that way.
Yeah.
So that's always the challenge, is finding out what that connection is going to be. What's the one big connection you're going to make? You don't have a lot of time to make it. You have a lot of
Right.
competition. And
We have a methodology. We use a survey to help develop the brand story because a lot of clients are too close to it. They don't really
Mhm.
know what's important, what's really going to resonate. And a lot of times we'll say, that this is what's making you different. We need to capitalize on this. This is a differentiator.
Yeah.
Sometimes even with product features. Uh, I had one client and he's going over the features and benefits and he wanted me to do a press release. And then as a throwaway, he goes, "Oh, and it's powered by AI. I don't know if you want to mention that." And I said, "That's the lead. That's
Yeah.
that's what's hot." So,
Yeah.
a lot of times we do that. We kind of look at the foreground and background and we figure, we have to pull this forward and this is the message.
Yeah. Because it can be forest and trees for people, just like, I tell patients all the time when I'm trying to explain things, I say, if I don't explain it well, stop me and tell me because I forget what I know versus what you know.
Mhm.
And I think it can be the same thing with branding because people, you're like you said, you get so close to it that something that you think might be obvious or something you think isn't that big a deal in reality is the big deal, but only somebody that's got has stepped back can really, you just keep running into the tree and there's a whole forest there. You could just walk around the tree.
Yeah. And I,
yeah,
th- I think I think
one of
go ahead,
Good,
Mark.
Mike. One of the things that we got really good at together over the past, and we've been actually, since we started working together, it's a couple of years, we're very quick to find the North Star that a client has that they can use in their brand. As Mike said, it could be the AI aspect.
Right.
A lot of clients think that one particular feature is the key feature and the differentiator. And it's really never about the feature. It's what's the benefit. And there should a lot of products have two, three, four, five great benefits. But you've got to focus on the one or ones that um, are going to solve problems and your audience. And we'll get into audience in a minute in the dentistry, but
Yeah.
there's the audience has to appreciate and be prepared emotionally for that attachment. So when you talk about audience in dentistry, you've got dentists at different levels. There are independents, those that are also participating with DSOs.
Right.
You've got hygienists, dental assistants, the front desk, there are so many people involved in the office. Everyone's an influencer at some point.
Right.
Influencer with the patient, an influencer with the doctor. The choices that are made by the dentist, even though his practice is buying a product or a service, who's influencing that? Who's saying, hey, doc, you got to look at this.
Hmm.
We're having a problem over here, or this could solve this problem. Those people you have to pay a lot of attention to, especially the hygienist,
Yeah.
as well as the dental assistants as well. Even though they're not necessarily paying directly, they're
Right.
influencing every single minute of every day. They're the ones that are really
Yeah.
working with the patient very closely.
Yeah. And the doctor needs to be, I think, aware of that, is that you need to listen to your team.
Yep.
They see things and they hear things that we don't see. In fact, just a little aside, whenever I do a cosmetic case, I always tell the patients when we're trying them in, right before we do the permanent bonding, I always say, we're going to put these in place and I'm going to leave. And you and the assistant are going to look at this and you're going to talk about it, because what I've learned over the years is if there's something that you don't like about it, you won't tell me, or most people won't tell me, but you'll tell her. So if you're not, no pressure, I'm going to leave. If you don't like it, you tell her, we do something differently.
That's smart. That's not very common.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology involved in being successful as a clinician, marketer, whatever. You really have to understand human nature, and that's, on your part, that's very observant, and just say, I don't need to be here, but I need to know, right?
Yeah.
You're empowering your team to make decisions, to be involved. That's got to be a benefit to the patient.
Yeah.
And then the practice, because the practice will grow because of that.
Yeah.
Getting back to features versus benefits, and this is,
Yes.
this is still common where you have companies and the engineering department says this is important and it's feature. When it's in the computer industry, we used to call it feeds and speeds, but there were no benefits. I'm seeing a lot of this now with the newer companies that are developing software. Where it's feature, but like, okay, you want me to integrate this into my practice and uproot our workflow, but you're not telling me what's in it for me. Years ago, I worked for a computer memory manufacturer, and we sold, memory upgrades that were in, computers at the factory level, retail. One day, the VP of engineering calls me down to his office. We're coming up with a new memory module, and he's just like going on and on about this technical engineering stuff. And I just like leaned back in my chair and I said, yeah, that's great, but why should I give a crap?
Yeah.
And he turned like purple. He goes like, what do you mean? Now they could do this. And I'm just writing it. He's like losing, he's like losing his stuff. And I'm just taking notes very calmly. And I said, thanks, I'll be back at the end of the day with your press release. And he realized what I did. And he goes,
yeah.
You.
Yeah. Because he was telling you, all these technical specs. And then when you pushed him, he started telling you, well, it's because they can do animation and they can do better graphics, and that's what's important.
Yeah. But, interesting about Mark and I are both branding centric, but we approach it from two different levels, two different sides. And then where we meet, that sweet spot is really, I think the strong suit of Personify Group. Mark, you want to explain that?
Well, I can tell you, we meet in the middle, but quite often around the edges, we go at it, and but in a healthy way. And we've had some really good differences on what to focus on, how to say it. because especially like when if it's copy or even an image, you've got this inner voice. Everybody's got an inner voice.
Right.
Everybody reads something a little differently than the next guy, and everybody writes something a little different than and in a certain voice, and it's not always something that someone else will get. So,
Hmm.
you have to go through those battles. I always think about the battle when young Frankenstein was with Gene Wilder
Hmm.
and
It's a great movie.
and Brooks, uh,
Yeah.
Mel Brooks, and there was a scene about putting on the Ritz. And
Yeah.
Gene Wilder's idea that he thought about on Long Island, out east, and Mel Brooks was like, "No, we're not going to have the monster dancing with a top hat. Not happening." And this, there's an interview on YouTube, you can see it. Gene Wilder is like they're fighting all day long on this one scene, and after hours of fighting, Mel Brooks goes, "Okay, we'll do it." And Wilder's like, "Wait a minute, why? Well, why are you okay with it now?" He goes, "I just wanted to see if you believed in it." It's a really great interview, and it really,
Mhm.
when you've got a team or partners that are working together closely,
Right.
it's important that you have differences of opinion, because if you always,
Yep.
have the same approach, you're really not going to, it's not a benefit to.
Yeah,
No.
if you're in an echo chamber, that's really a recipe for failure. I mean, and that's why companies bring outside perspectives in, because they need someone that's outside the politics, the nepotism,
Right.
whatever it is, and give a fresh take on, like, okay, this is how you need to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but the way we approach things, we've discussed this internally, and very often what I'm doing with a client is I'm providing air cover for the brand. So in PR, in that outbound messaging, I need to articulate what that brand stands for, and it needs to be rooted in truth.
Mhm.
So I'm always hunting and gathering, looking for social proof so I can make a point and push it out.
Yeah.
And I'll put pressure on a client, like, if you want me to say this, why should I say it?
Right.
If I'm going to go to an editor and set up an interview, how are you proving this point?
Yep.
What
You know
what,
what?
what is this claim based on?
One of the things that frustrates me as a dental consumer is the bar graphs. And you look at a bar graph, and everybody knows that if you zoom in close enough on the numbers, you can make one bar a lot higher than the other bar. But really, um, of what importance is it? If it's some bonding thing and it's 1 megapascal more than somebody else, but you zoom it in so that you're in hundredths of megapascals, yeah, you look tremendously high. But
Well,
it,
perception is reality.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's why that's done. I think it's important to be authentic, and science based, but not every company has that backing. Not
right,
every company has a science based message, um, because not every product is science
right.
based.
Yeah,
So there's a little bit of that. So you've got to find your avenues to differentiate. But you also have to find your avenues to say, but this is something that is not that new that you won't get it when you bring it into your practice,
right,
that it'll
Mhm.
be difficult to add to your workflow. So there's always like way different, but you don't want to scare um,
right.
uh, the buyer
Yeah.
from purchasing.
Right.
Well, and I'll throw out something too for the doctors that are watching this is, and this isn't on something like a bonding agent. This is more on something like you bring in a mill or 3D printer, or you're going to bring in something like an intraoral scanner or even digital x-ray for the few people that are still buying film. I always, if I'm going to make a major disruption in the workflow, I always have a team meeting. I have a staff meeting and I tell the team, like this is what I'm thinking of doing. And depending on what it is, sometimes I'll have the hygienists huddle up about it, the dental assistants, the admin team. And, I'm like, think about if we do this, think about how it's going to impact you. And is it going to create problems or is it going to create benefits? And
Yep.
then I buy lunch. We basically do like a red team meeting where everybody brings their features and benefits or their pluses and minuses on bringing it in. And and we talk about it. And if I get a general consensus that it's a good thing, then we do it. And what I love about that is you get that buy-in. You don't come in as the doctor and say, we're gonna
Mhm.
we're gonna change this today, or we're gonna change this starting Friday, and everybody panics and nobody wants to change. Uh,
No.
So
you know,
John, one of the services we offer is we do focus groups that involve dental teams, because many times a product is just introduced, and really marketing should drive the introduction of a product, should actually drive the actual innovation itself, because you shouldn't be innovating because you think it's a cool idea. You should be innovating because the market's looking for it. They're asking for it.
yeah,
They need it. It'll help them. And so in order to involve the practice, we actually started this service. We will do a focus group virtually done like this,
genius.
like this, and we'll get input early on prior to launch from various team members, and they can be from the same practice, or we can build like a virtual focus team that has a dentist from one practice, a hygienist from another, so that you don't run into um, that, well, I want to make sure I say the right thing because I work for this guy kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we break that barrier down. And by doing this, you can come up with the benefits that are most important to the hygienist, to the dentist, to the dental assistant, to the front office, to back office, to everybody within the practice, and lo and behold, the patient as well. And when you do that up front, prior to launch, you can save a lot of money in trying to figure it out after the fact. Oh, here's our feedback now, 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, because
right.
we didn't get that feedback before we launched.
Yeah,
And how many times does a dentist or a practice buy a product and it sits on the shelf?
Yeah.
right.
It doesn't get open because
John,
nobody really took the time.
Yeah,
Here's
yeah.
what you need to do as a team.
John, do any manufacturers that have, they're selling large capital investment equipment,
right.
maybe it's a, CAD cam or a panoramic,
Right.
panoramic X-ray. Do they ever let a practice test drive it for a week or so before the purchase, like actually in the practice?
It kind of depends. They'll do demos of scanners.
Hmm.
As far as radiography, no. And I've always said, from my perspective, I wish that there were ways, and I know it's, expense and all that stuff, but I wish there were ways to do that. I had a quick story. Years ago, a company created an argon curing laser. And at the time, I think we were curing composites in like 40 seconds or 60 seconds. And it took forever. And this company came out with this laser, it would cure composite in 10 seconds. They had all the science behind it. It was, I want to say it was like $5,000. And I'm like, $5,000 for a curing light when I can buy another curing light for 1,000. So the guy came into my office 3 or 4 times. He was based out of Kansas City. And one day he came in, he was like, you know what? I don't have any demos for a couple of weeks. So I'm just going to leave this with you. And a couple of weeks later, he called. He's like, yeah, I got to come pick it up. And I was like, all right, how much? Because at that point in time, I'd gotten so used to using it. And I was like, I don't want to go back. And I wish that there was a way to, it's probably the wrong thing to say, but it's almost the drug dealer approach. I'll give you a little bit for free And then when you find out how great it is, but I wish we could do that more in dentistry because
Yeah, I mean that's fantastic. You can do that with instruments. You can do that
yeah,
with handpieces. You can't do that with a CBCT.
no, unfortunately you
But
can't.
you can, a dentist can, a lot of the companies will invite dentists to come in and experience them in a
Mhm.
facility where they're in practice, or there are local practices that they say, there's a dentist that's about 40 minutes away, but you can go see this product and in
Yeah,
practice. And then you have the opportunity then to test out a large piece of equipment. But yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, it would be great to be able to test it out. But some of these things weigh hundreds of pounds, and
sure.
you're not going to move it in just to test it.
Right.
There's a little bit of that. That's one of the things that trade shows are very effective, especially for large equipment, because you can at least feel and touch and have somebody walk you through a preset set of
Yeah.
scans or anything to see how something works, at least with, again, CBCT kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Vatech, I think, does a pretty good job of that at trade shows. They
They
really
all
do a
do.
good job of
Castream
showing.
does a good job.
Yeah,
I think most of these companies do very well in presenting how a product works. I think it gets, you've got some of the AI software solutions that are working with these systems, and they're doing a decent job for the most part as
so
well.
I want you to tell the story because I think this is kind of cool. And you've told this to me before, but just so everybody can hear it. So Michael and Mark, they work with Vivardis in marketing the Curodont product. And you know where I'm going with this, you
Yeah,
guys. So
I
tell
do.
me the story because I think it's a really funny and great story about marketing.
So we're in Boston with one of the team members from Vivardis having lobster rolls. This was, I guess, if we're in Boston with February,
It was the Yankee meeting. It was so
So
January.
I would say it'd be January if it was.
January, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So loud restaurant, and you can see that I have a guitar in the back, and
Yeah.
so I play, and sometimes it gets a little loud. I'm not gonna lie, but we're in this restaurant, and it's a loud restaurant, and these lobster rolls are fantastic. We're in Boston, of course they are, and I thought the client had said, the product is called Curodont, and I thought I heard him say something about Curodontist. And I stopped for a second. I'm like, hold on a second. Did you just say? Because as soon as I heard it, I'm like, there's something there
Uh-huh.
in 1/100th of a second.
Right. That's got
That's what I
legs.
thought.
And I thought that's what
And
he said
and
too. And Mark
and
and
when
I are
I
like, look,
and when I said, "Did you say Curodontist?" He goes, "No." And I looked over at him, and I looked over at Mike, and I must have looked like my dog when it was about 2 years old, and when it hear an
Yeah.
interesting sound, they rotate their head.
Yeah.
Um, I'm like, and then the three of it, there was dead silence for a moment there, and then we were like, yeah, that's
Yep.
the idea. Because how do you develop an emotional attachment to a product without having a community that loves it?
Yeah.
And then Curodontist is so dentist. It's so
Yeah.
like a specialist in using Curodont. And so of course, we said, don't tell anybody. We want to be able to present this to the client. And
Right.
and in no time, he goes back. He goes, hey guys, listen to this. We found that out later on. So, but when we shared it with the founders of the company, we did a presentation, and they were like in love. And
Yeah.
now it's in Italy. It's being rolled out in Europe. It's being rolled out literally across every aspect of the company. And we're so excited. I can't tell you. It's like watching a child being born,
mm,
Yep.
because you have just a germ of an idea, and it's so right that everybody knows it and sees it instantly.
Well,
It's,
that's got
you
to be
know,
such a good feeling,
oh my God.
Yeah,
It is.
It really is.
yeah,
It's kind of why we do what we do.
Yeah,
yeah,
this is the kind of thing like you live for when you finally get something like that, you know?
yeah. And it's
They
what
don't
I think is
always
really
come.
cool. I thought what I think is really cool about the story. It was kind of one of those Bob Ross happy accident things, and yet it's genius. I mean, it really
You
is.
know, I always say that, the genius is in noticing when somebody else has a great thought.
Yep.
And the thought could be from out left field. It could be from a waiter. It can be from a snippet of something you heard or
Hmm.
read, or somebody over your shoulder said something. But it's noticed the genius is saying, wait a second, did you say what?
Yeah.
It's not always just pulling it out of your head and saying,
Yeah.
here's a great idea.
And then,
Yep.
and,
Great
and, and
ideas are all around us, and people that are really good in marketing notice the idea when it's happening and they listen to it. And
Mm.
they, and they're not they drop their ego when they hear it, and there's praise when somebody else even comes up with
Yeah.
an idea.
and the other trick is, you have the kernel of an idea. How do you grow it? How do you extrapolate that concept onto various levels, whether
Yep.
it's, advertising, patient education, all these different, components that we're tasked with supporting. Um, that thread is running through everything.
Well, and I think it's good that I read a book one time, and one of the things I learned in it was they were talking about innovation, and they estimated. I wish I remember the title of the book, but anyway, they estimated that like 75% of innovation in a certain like industry comes from outside that industry. And the story they said was basically, there's a meeting and they're talking about something. It could be engineering, it could be marketing, it could be whatever it is. And somebody will be new to the company and they'll say, well, when I worked at the airline industry, we did this. And people will be like, oh my gosh, we could apply that,
Hmm.
whatever it is. I'd never
100%.
thought of that. What a great idea. And the reason I bring that up is because it's kind of like that with what you guys do. If you're in the company, sometimes you need that outside perspective.
And so we've both worked outside of the dental industry. So manufacturing, telecom, IT, industrial products. There's a database of things marketing solutions that work and don't work that we've
Mhm.
learned over time and that we apply. But when you think about innovation, uh, I always think of like Velcro or
Hmm.
Tang, or
Yeah.
these things. Tang is from it came out of the astronaut program.
Yeah.
Velcro was something that I forget what industry it ended up being
That
used.
was that was NASA too.
Yeah, in military they started using it, although they created a quieter version of it for obvious.
And
Yeah.
Velcro was developed from nature.
Yeah. The cockleburr.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Here's a little just on the NASA thing, nickel titanium, which, changed the world, nickel titanium endophiles, that's from NASA.
Hmm.
They needed a metal that like could flex and withstand incredible amounts of heat and stuff. And so, sometimes people are like, why are we spending all this money, on rockets? And the payback for some of that stuff's been pretty good.
Yeah, the trickle down. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, but that's a great point. Uh, Dentistry, robotics in dentistry now have been influenced by robotics in other industries.
Sure.
It wouldn't be acceptable,
Manufacturing's been using it for decades.
Yeah.
manufacturing, but even in surgeons now are using robots,
Yeah.
but guided. And, at first you're like, oh, I'm not going to trust a robot. But you know what? If, my nephew uses robotics. He's in New Jersey, Mike. And, he removes appendixes every single day using robotics. It's managed by the doctor.
Right.
So that's one of the things that a lot of people have against using robots. I mean, let's face it, there are new solutions that are coming out that they're not even hands-on,
Right.
which is kind of like, all right, let's see how that goes. Like self-driving cars. Let's see how that works out for a while.
Yeah.
And it probably will. It's just you got to work out the kinks, and it takes a
Yep.
while to work those out.
Yeah, absolutely. You only learn from failure.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that. If you do
Well,
something and it's like it goes great, I'm like, okay, what did I learn from that? Really not much.
Right.
The problem, well, the challenge with self-driven cars is they are put in an environment where not every car is self-driven.
Yes.
So if all the cars were the same and had the same technology, they could detect each other and avoid,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but look at these. I don't know if you guys have seen these artistic drone swarms that they do.
Yeah. China is leading the world with that. Have you seen some of these displays? They do fireworks with drones.
Yeah. They had one a couple of years ago after a Royals game here, and these things, it was amazing to watch these things get up. They made the Royals, crown logo in the air and stuff, and you could see them all, but like Mike said, they all knew where each other were, It's pretty cool.
The other side of looking at that, though, is that the self-driving cars may work better in environments where there are humans driving cars too, because they may find out that humans are actually better at it than robots, because there are so many circumstances that a robot won't necessarily recognize, and people have died because of it.
Yeah.
A certain situation, whereas a human eye would. Not to take anything away from robots or human eyes.
Well, I almost pulled out in front of somebody last night, and there were humans in both cars. I just didn't see them. So, hey,
But they saw you.
They saw me.
There you go.
And then they gestured at me. And
yeah, I bet you see a robotic car can't flip you the bird.
yeah.
Not yet.
They got to design. They have to design the feature in.
That's right.
It just pops up.
That'll be the next big feature. That's pretty good.
It probably will be like where they have HOV lanes now. There'll probably be lanes with robot cars.
I could see that for sure. It's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
So, well, guys, we're bumping up against an hour. Okay. So I appreciate you spending the time with me and telling your stories.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. So before we close out, how can people find you if they want to engage your services?
I think we'll go to our website, personifygroup.com.
There you go.
Easy
to find.
Just go to the info. You could go to our LinkedIn profiles. But send us an info note and we'll respond immediately.
Super. Yep. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. And everybody watching, thank you. This is the Technology Evangelist podcast, and we are sponsored by my good friends at Medidenta Digital. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, John.